Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Commercialization Academy. Today, we're going to talk about, can we up the slide once, please, Steve? And we're going to talk about ecosystem. So I am extremely excited that we have a guest speaker today who's a good friend of mine up at CSU. He is out of CSU Ventures, and he will give himself a small introduction. So I won't talk about Steve too much, but really like the work that he's doing. And he both has a high-tech startup and he works with a lot of teams. So just a big understanding of why it's important to explore your ecosystem. So last thing, Steve, if you will kick it forward one more. I wanted just to back up real quick, and I give the overview each time. So remember that we've mapped this out as 12 steps to get a campus startup kicked off. And in January, we talked about flipping the framework. And the reason for that is that if you are starting with a really good technical idea in your lab and then looking for a market, you are essentially backwards from the way that most people do this in business. In business, you go out and you find a problem to solve, and then you figure out how to solve that problem. So you need to flip your thinking in order to create a business. The second one is customer discovery. This is just the baseline. It's the foundation for everything we do, which is, again, you can't just invent something really cool in your lab and hope that someone will walk down the hall from 3M and want to license it from you. You have to go out into industry and you have to meet people and better understand the problems they're trying to solve. So we teach multiple classes on customer discovery, how to get out of the building and actually interview people and talk to them. We've got this intro to customer discovery. We also have starting blocks, which will run later this year. It's like a 1 week. You come a couple of times and do some homework in between. We also do research to market. That's it's about a 3-week, much more heavy lift, and it's a lot of fun. We run that in conjunction with CSU. And then there are the big I-Core programs that run nationally, and we can tell you a lot more about those. But understanding how to talk to a customer, how to learn what the product need really is, and then creating your product to fit the market need is the first and key thing you need to do in order to be successful as a startup. So in March, we talked about IRLs. These are industry readiness levels. And this is just a pretty cool framework for looking at 6 different areas, 6 different metrics of things you need to do a startup. So if you are lost in space on what you actually need to do, call us. We will walk you through the IRL. You get a nice, cool heat map. And we talk to you then about what are specific steps you need to do next. Last month was license or startup. And for those of you who were here, that is a tough decision on occasion. So we talked about when do you license and go back to the lab and try something else and kind of have one revenue stream, but go have another shot on goal from your lab. And when do you invest the amount of time and effort that's required to really do a startup? So all of those are available on video, but we also can talk to you about them at any time. So this month, we're now going to talk about ecosystem, and I'm just going to let Steve jump right in and explain to you why is the concept of ecosystem so important. We are not talking about environmentalism in this case. We are talking about knowing all the other players in your industry. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, Sally. Well, thanks for the nice introduction. Hey, everyone. Yeah, today I am going to hopefully talk about, let's see if I can get my computer to work. Here we go. Competitive landscapes and tools that will help you understand what a competitive landscape is and how to start building one. So we're going to build a couple different maps today. And talk about them and their specifics, the nuances associated with them, and the value associated with it. So I'll jump right in. My name's Steve Albers. I'm the Associate Director of the Launchpad program up here at CSU. So sort of equal to what Sally does down at CU. I wish I could say equal, but let's be honest, Sally does it better than I do. And yeah, it's fun being a part of that program. I get to see a lot of startups. So we grow about 5 to 8 startups a year up here at CSU. And Launchpad is really the program that these startups engage with to really understand if it's a good idea to continue to push the technology forward into a startup, what the things are needed to grow that startup, and other components associated with those questions. So that's really fun. I only do that part-time. My other part-time job is I'm the CTO and co-founder of a company called Living Ink. So Living Ink Technologies turns algae into pigments, specifically black pigment. You can see some of the ink that we started making quite a couple years ago, and have continued to grow that product portfolio. So pretty fun. We've won some SBIRs. We've gone through I-Corps programs. We have revenue. Raised over $1.5 million in non-dilutive equity. We're doing some dilutive equity raises right now. So in the thick of it, so to speak, I had a really hard time saying yes to doing this, I will admit, because CU is my natural enemy. As a dual alumni at CSU, there was a lot of trash talking going on between CU and CSU in the early 2000s in football. And so at the height of my time at CSU, yeah, there was a lot of that. All joking aside, love what Sally's done at CU, but I've been CSU through and through, been up here for quite a while. Spent a lot of time at University of Illinois doing education. Actually taught high school for 6 years down in Denver. So know the Front Range really well, and I'm pretty well versed in this space. So it's a fun opportunity to be included. So thanks, Sally. So today, what we're gonna try to bang through here, and I may go at different rates. So I should probably say a couple of baseline things before we get started. Mute while I'm going through this. Unmute when you have questions. Slow me down, stop me, let's talk. I'd rather have a conversation than a monologue. So I am not averse to hearing somebody just jump in and say, hey, Steve, got a question. So please do that if you do. Always accessible after as well. But yeah, for the time being, everybody muted is a really nice way to sort of start the whole thing. So with that being said, we're going to go through some market maps. So how do we build maps that help you understand your market and your engagement in a specific market? What's the value of those maps? And how to build them, right? And so we're going to focus on workflow and ecosystem maps. So these are two maps that I really have a good time trying to instruct, because I've seen so much value for my own startup through building these maps. And as you get into commercialization of a cutting edge science technology, you'll definitely see the value of building some of these maps and getting your understanding on a physical piece of paper to say, oh, okay, so this is really tangible knowledge that I can continue to build and move forward. And so, we'll have some lecture time, and we'll also do some workshopping time. So I put team in there because usually I teach this to teams, but it sounds like there's a multitude of individuals on the call. It's a great opportunity to try to do all these things individually and then come back together with your team and try it out together and see what everybody got answers to. So there's the agenda. It should go pretty quickly, but let's go ahead and jump right in. So what are we talking about when we say market mapping? So we're really focused on these physical maps. So you can make them electronically, right? PowerPoint, I have a billion examples of those. You can put them on giant Post-it notes. I think there's a ton of value in doing that. Whiteboards, anywhere, but a physical map that helps you organize the economic activity in a target market. That's a really important set of words here, with a specific target customer. So you can think about your technology as a platform technology. Many technologies come out of the universities are platform technologies. When I say that, I mean that it's a technology that can be applied across multiple different markets. Markets look very different. Markets that are very similar are still very different. And it's important to understand that you're really going to have to pick a target market and a specific target customer. So there's two main maps that we'll look at, is a workflow and an ecosystem map. And the cool thing is that these maps build upon one another. And you can update these maps and change these maps and modify these maps as your understanding evolves. So this is a really important component, is that you'll recognize how these things build upon one another. Your knowledge, as you go out and look at the markets and try to understand the markets and talk to people in the markets, will grow, and thus your maps will grow. The complexity of your maps will grow. And it's really cool to see your knowledge of a specific market grow per these maps. I think they're really valuable. I am a visual learner, so I'll throw that out there as well. So this is one of many ways to actually go about trying to chew on this content. Okay, so what are you going to get out of this mapping exercise? So what do you expect to walk away with? When you do some mapping and you do it well, you gain knowledge of the target industry, right? And this can help you inform strategy. So if you know that there are a lot of different steps in one market vertical compared to very few steps to get through another market vertical, that may change your strategy as you try to enter into commercial markets, right? You can build a network of industry connections. So as you build this, you will start seeing more and more fidelity within these markets. You hopefully will go out and actually start querying people about these markets. And as you do that, you're going to grow your network. And so one of the key components of a startup, at least in my opinion, is that they're always under-resourced and poorly staffed. And so you're going to have to build networks. You're going to have to build partnerships. You're going to have to build connections if you want to survive those early first years. This is a great tool to say, hey, I know who you work with. I know what you do as a specific employee at company X. And that can help you grow your network, where someday someone may say, I want to work with you, or I know the perfect person that you need to talk to. So you can build strong relationships through this, and it keeps your knowledge in one specific space. So I have a map PowerPoint for my Living Inc. engagement. It changes. It's got like 100 slides in there, and there are so many different iterations of these maps. It's been really important for me to sort of catalog all of that knowledge that I've gained. So one thing I didn't tell you guys is that I'm a molecular geneticist by trade. I got my PhD up here in cell molecular biology at CSU. I used to genetically engineer cyanobacteria to make different products. And now I'm making ink and pigments, and it's been a crazy jump. But these maps have helped me sort of conceptualize everything I know about this new market and sort of put it somewhere. So that's a really important thing. And it helps you become first in the industry. So in inks, you don't call a printer, you call them converters. And if you call a converter a printer, they all look at you with pretty awkward eyes because you don't know the industry. So these maps will help you understand the industry. Okay, so we're going to try to take a look at the steps in commercialization. Who are the participants in those steps? Who gains the value? This is an important piece, right? It's always about value. Who's going to get value as you walk through all these different steps that you have to do? And who you may or need to partner with, right? And so you can also understand your competition, how they went through the process, and get some really cool insights. And so if we're going to really focus on this, we need to understand that markets, commercial markets are focused around industries, right? And so there are multiple markets or multiple verticals within specific industries, right? And so we organize economic activity into these industries. And you can sort of delineate them by sometimes the way that trade show associations or trade shows or publications actually segregate these. So there is a, let's see, inkjet industry, inkjet printing. There is a flexographic ink industry, right? There is environmental packaging industries. And so they're all very different. They look very different, and you engage with them very different. But here's some other examples, right? Transportation, medical, entertainment. This helps you understand the industry so that you can go out and have informed conversations with people in the industry. So when we talk about industry verticals, so a market vertical is one specific slice of a larger industry, right? And so if we're talking about ink, I'll just talk about ink a lot. So you probably get really bored with me about pigments and ink, sorry. Ink can be separated into flexographic, let's see, offset, screen print, inkjet, UV curable. And so these are all different industry verticals, and they function very differently. And they have different wants, needs, and desires of the people in that industry. So it's important to sort of segregate. So I'll jump into living ink just to make sure everyone, excuse me, make sure everybody understands what I'm talking about when I throw living ink out there. So we turn algae into black pigments currently. So we're working on colors. A lot of people are excited about colors. Black is color is 60% of our world. About 60% of the colorants in the world are black. And they're used for a lot of different things. And so you can talk about the carbon black that's put in tires and what function it plays in tires. Do they want tires to be black? Not necessarily. There's a different function. Coatings. So when I talk about coatings, you can talk about sort of face coatings, right? Cosmetics. So there's a lot of black in cosmetics. You start thinking about it, you can think, come up with a lot of examples. Inks, plastics. So you cut a piece of plastic through and it's been not painted, but it is dyed, right, with a certain color. So plastics is a big part of the carbon black industry. And then there's other technical rubbers. So there's a lot of different verticals in pigments. There's a lot of different verticals in inks, right? And so you can see how you sort of jump through a couple of these things. So what do? We replace petroleum-derived pigments, which is essentially what black is. It's almost always derived from a petroleum product with an eco option. So we have several facilities in Aurora, and we make a carbon black alternative that can be used in a lot of different markets. Some of the value propositions, it's a drop-in replacement. So it has the same characteristics of what we're replacing. It's 100% renewable, safe. It has unbelievable innovative marketing attached to it. People love the word algae in certain instances, even if they don't know what it is. And it does have a negative carbon footprint, which you can't say for carbon black derived from petroleum. So now that you know living ink, hopefully there's some context for some of the things that you'll see today. So step 0, this is a really important one. If we're going to build any maps that actually make sense, you have to pick a target market. And why do I say that? Is because these markets look very different as you start diving into them. And if you try to say, well, I have a platform technology, I have a technology that assesses the quality of embryos, and that's it. Well, what market, right? Are we talking about the human market? Are we talking about the bovine market? What about the exotic animal market, right? And so there's different markets that you have to focus on, and they look very different. Imagine trying to take that technology into a human market compared to taking it into the bovine market. Unbelievably different. And if you say, oh, I'm just going to look at customer discovery and try to understand my maps within all these markets, you're just going to confuse yourself. So the first things first, pick a target market. And so this is the example of the pigments, right? And so we focused first on ink. We're also working pretty hard in plastics, but those look very different. So our inks, here's some of the inks that we've been producing. So we've actually been able to generate our own ink, sell it into the marketplace, and get products placed through printers onto actual boxes. So this is pretty cool. This is an example of a company that uses our ink that's sold in flagship REI stores when people actually went to REI.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
Question on that. So when you picked your target market, you showed a pie diagram of the different verticals. They all look like they're pretty much equal sized, if that was what you're trying to represent. What factors went into picking the target once you had your map in place?
Great question. Is that Jim? Yeah, that's a tough one, Jim. I'm actually developing an entire workshop just on that question, because it is a tough one, right? There's a lot of different variables that go into it. So size, ease of entering the market, right? Preparedness in terms of the technology. There's a lot of different variables that go into that, and that's a really, really tough concept. Partially the reason I say you got to pick a market today, and it might be just throwing darts blindfolded at a wall, is just so you can practice the concept But that answer is very difficult. Which market is your beachhead? So the beachhead is the first market that makes most sense in terms of your strategy moving forward. It may not be the biggest, but it may have the best margins, right? It may not have the best margins, but it may have other attributes that are really important, right? Maybe your technology is really well fit to that, and you believe that showing progress, economic progress in that market will get you other types of funds, right? Maybe dilutive or non-dilutive. So there's a lot of different variables that go into that question. That's a good one. And I'm developing a workshop that we're going to run hopefully in August, and I'll be sharing with Sally. So all of you guys can actually participate in that workshop with us. So great question. Thank you for organically advertising sort of our workshops in the future. Does that help, Jim? Okay, great. Okay, so the real step one is, what are the steps in the commercialization process? And so I like to call this the workflow map. How does the work flow, right? And so if we're going to take a look at the workflow map, let me see. I always like to think of it as the chain of steps that product takes from fire to earth to end user, right? So what are the materials that are generated as a process? So for ink, I'll show you ink. I'll show you flexographic ink. So that's our market vertical, one of our beachheads. And here it is, right? And so if we start to take a look at the materials required for us to make a finished ink and put it on a box. So you see printed product here, right? And you can work back with all of the different things that go into that product. So print material resources. So I'm talking about paper, I'm talking about boxes, right? So do we make the boxes that we print on, or do we find a partner? Okay, scaled ink volumes. How do we scale the ink? Do we do it ourselves? Do we have all the hardware and capital equipment that is required to do this? So this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying, hey, what you need to do if you're going to come up with a workflow is map out the materials. So the fertilization group, right? What are they using to assess the quality of the embryos? They're checking RNA, so you're going to have RNA extraction kits. Do they do that? Does somebody else do that, right? And where are they getting those kits? Are they buying them online, or do they have a partnership? And so figuring out the materials, even if you're, say, a data analytics company, well, what do you need to crunch data, right? You're going to need some computers. Do you use CU's computers, or are you expected to use somebody else's, your own, right? And so this is a really, I think, basic step to say, okay, all right, I understand that there are a lot of different things that are going to go into making this. I think a great example is there was a company who went through Energy iCore years ago, and they said, we're a battery company. And I said, what do you explicitly do? And they say, we coat the anodes in a battery with a unique technology. And I was like, that's cool. You're not a battery company. You need to partner with a battery company, right? Because imagine all the different parts that go into a battery. It's not just coating the anode, it's all of that other stuff. Where do they get the lithium for a lithium-ion battery? They didn't know. So where are you going to partner? But that's important to understand that, oh, if we're going to be a battery company, we got to source lithium. We have to source production facilities and all this stuff. So it can get very complex, and I'm not saying that it doesn't, but just think about the materials and the material flow through to a hypothetical end product in a commercial market. That's why step 0 was find that market. Okay. Now, next thing you really have to think about doing is being able to say, what are the actions that are required to do these things, right? Because the actions are where you're adding value. I haven't been checking the chats, but if Sally, if any chat comes up, you can
I've got the chat, Steve. I am keeping things live over here, just supporting what you're saying.
Fantastic, thank you. So if we're talking about the actions, this is where the value is added, right? And it can get pretty nuanced. So you have to at times think a little higher level, 50,000 foot view, 30,000 foot view instead of right on the ground. But the battery company, great example. So pulling lithium out of the ground is a big task. Cleaning that lithium and refining it to a certain amount is a big task. Somebody's got to do it, right? Who does it? Who are you going to buy from? Who are your partners? Who are your source? Who's your source? And so that's sort of the action step that I like throwing in there, because I think it's really important. right? So if we talk about living ink, we're talking about the pigment and the vehicle. So how do we develop the pigment? Because that's really our space. So we have to source raw material. We don't grow our own algae. We partner with algae groups to get their materials. We do process it. We do mill it. We do refine it and clean it and get it ready to go into prepared ink. And so there are different steps, but this is where the value is added. And so I do like lecturing on value chain. I took this out because it's a pretty long lecture, but this is where people say, hey, I did something, I expect value. And so this can be a really good spot for you to understand all the different steps it takes to get a product into the marketplace. But all the other things that where either your company can capture value, right? Or your partners can capture value. I mean, you may need to share that overall value, but you may have to do less work if you have more partners. And so it's this sort of balance that you have to try to meet on if it's going to be worth your while to mine lithium. The answer is almost always no for battery companies, right? But there's a chance that you do that. HP is a great example of this in the ink space. So inkjet printers, HP essentially owns the entire process. So they make the cartridges, they make the ink, they fill them, where a lot of other companies don't do that. And so they don't need that many partners because they do it all. They have the ability to do it all because they're such a big company and they capture all that value. So you think about the cost of a printer cartridge, most of that goes back to HP, which is some pretty big margins. So anyway, the action steps, right? So these action steps that you're actually going to have to do to get a product into the marketplace, right? Who's going to print it? Who's going to deliver it? Who's going to scale it? Who's going to test it? Who's going to mill it? Who's going to process it? Who's going to clean it? All of these different steps. Who's going to grow the algae, right? So people ask us all the time, do we grow? That's out of our mix. So now, great. Now we're getting to the next step is the stakeholders. So what does that mean? So if we take a look at all the different companies that might play a role in this, you start to understand where some companies may gobble up a lot of this. Some companies may gobble up a small amount of this. I learned this lesson all too hard through sort of our first technology at Living Ink. We made a growing greeting card. It was pretty cool. So we used algae as an ink that was initially invisible to the eye, and over time it grew. And so imagine getting a greeting card in the mail, and first day it doesn't really say anything. The next day you come home and there's a cake that's grown on the card. The next day you come home and it says happy birthday, love your wife on the card, and so on and so forth. So it was this engaging card. We did this through Kickstarter. We delivered 1,000 products and we did everything. We grew the algae. We packaged all the products. We shipped all the products. We dealt with customer feedback, right? And it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. It scarred me. It still makes sort of the hair stand up on my head when I say that we were that dumb to do it all. But it was a great learning experience. So when you look at this map, you start seeing all the different groups that are playing a role or could potentially play a role here, you know? A lot of medtech startups, and Sally can attest to this, I'm sure, forget or don't really understand the weight that the regulators play in terms of getting into the marketplace, or the insurers, right? The insurance companies that allow for specific codes to be charged against in the marketplace. And so if you forget those things, you say, well, it's this easy. I just make the drug and I give it to people and everybody's safe. That's going, you know, you're destined to fail if you don't understand the complexity of the market. And so now we have the material step, now we have the action steps, and now we have the people who do the action steps. And I think those are really 3 components for you guys to be savvy enough to say, hey, I understand my competition, right? And this sort of leads to this competitive landscape. So you can see how I'm building. It can get a little overwhelming. This is a lot to cover, but want to just sort of get down the basics right now. So with that, we'll move on to ecosystem, okay? And so what is the ecosystem? Community interacting as a system, passing energy, materials, doing work, making things, packaging things, touching things, all of this stuff makes out our ecosystem, okay? So focus on these words. So I pulled them out for exactly this reason. It's community interacting as a system to get something into the marketplace, essentially, right? Flow of materials, money, and information. How is this all moving as one coherent group? And so you can start seeing how complex this is. And if you don't pick a market vertical and you don't pick a target customer, you're just going to be lost. There's going to be a billion different areas going off into space. That's why it's important to start with step 0. And there it is. So this is a snapshot of what we've put together for Living Ink. It is a little mind-numbing at times, but if you start to slow down, you can see that there's different people playing different roles in different spaces, okay? And so if you take a look here at the processors, millers, and dispersers, these are truly our competition at Living Ink. We've decided to partner with some really cool algae growers, right? But we've decided to compete against these guys. And this information of knowing who these people are can give us a lot of information on what they do, how they price things, and how they were successful or not successful in actually making it through the market. Who are we going to have to interact with? If we do genetically modified organisms, right? If we do food contact inks. So that's a big deal, right? Who do we have to interact with? Who are the ink manufacturers here? The large and the small. You can figure out who the right partner is by sometimes taking a look at the size of the partner that you're looking at, right? The largest ink company in the world is worried about volume, while the smaller ink companies in the world are really looking to get market share, differentiate themselves. So that might be a different type of target that we're actually working on. So, and you can see who brokers, distributes, who converts, the printers, right? Who's making the cardboard? Who do we have to work with? We actually have a really tight connection with a group called Eco-Enclose that actually is the most sustainable. They call themselves the most sustainable cardboard company in the world. They love our ink so much that they're willing to actually work with us to get products onto cardboard. But they also print, so they have a small printer in their own facility. So we've kind of combined that and found the right partner that can do multiple different things for us. So this is what the ecosystem somewhat looks like. And you can use these for a lot of different reasons, right? So what's the value? Let's tear through this really quick. What's the value of putting together this whole materials, you know, the people associated, the action items, and the competition or the people that are doing what you think you're going to have to do to get into a market? Well, you understand how some people are solving some problems, right? Very few markets have no solutions whatsoever. People hack together solutions if there's a problem in a market. So you're going to have competition. It's not horrible because you can learn a lot from that competition, right? You can learn what you're up against. You can figure out how to tell a story about why you're better than the competition. So if you don't even know the competition, you can't tell a story of why you're better. And I've seen this multiple times where somebody gets up, describes their product, and somebody says, well, what about this product from this company? And everybody sort of stares blindly into space like, I don't know how to answer that one because I didn't even know about it. Not a good thing, right? But the other really cool component about putting together an ecosystem is that you can learn who your partners are or who you want your partners to be, right? And where you need partners. So distribution into China of ink is quite difficult. It's not, you slap a label on, you ship it to China, right? There are nuances. So we've had to find our own broker in China to get ink into China. We've actually found multiple brokers, right? We've partnered with a large ink company to try to help us get ink into mainland China. One of the things we've actually started doing is actually producing with that large ink company in Hong Kong, where it's 10 times easier to get materials in and doesn't cost as much for us to ship. So you can find the partners. And as a small startup, I refuse to believe that you won't need partners. Partners are critical. And, you know, there's a whole lecture on partners, which is a really interesting one because there's a lot of different nuances associated with that. But who's going to help you enter the market? You want to do it all by yourself? Good luck. I tried that. It almost killed me. It literally almost killed me. And literally almost ruined Living Ink, but we got through it. So try to figure out how you use these maps for partners, okay? And so a couple ways to really do this. First is primary research, and this is what customer discovery is. So if you go through the R2M program, you're actually asked to go out and talk to customers. That's primary research, where you're collecting the data. It's fun. It is. It's painful, but it's fun. It's a really cool, compelling component of real customer discovery and a savvy way to get into the market. But what you're going to have to focus on here is the secondary research. So secondary research is essentially mining data that other people have provided, right? And so you're searching online, market reports. I'm sure CU has access to a lot of market reports. Up here at CSU, we have, our own databases that we use to develop market reports for people. But how big is the market? Who's the players in the market? What do they do? What parts of the workflow do they work on? What parts do they not work on, right? And so you can collect a lot of that data by doing what we call secondary research. Primary research is by far the best because you really get the nuance associated out of the data, but secondary research is by far easier because it's so much more passive. Okay, so a real quick summary since I'm trying to wrap up here. Pick a market. Pick one. Just pick one. Don't overthink it. Where do you think your product would actually go? And it isn't easy. It is a total mess. It'll look painful. It'll feel painful. But the more you do it, the more you're going to start seeing value, and the more you're going to say, wow, these are kind of cool. And it'll add clarity, guarantee it. And remember, these maps aren't just so that you can say, look at the maps I made. You'll leverage these maps to develop strategy. And that strategy will be much more savvy if you have these maps as a part of the development process. Okay, so here's the workshop period. Here's where you guys actually get to try to practice what I've been preaching. And so the concept is really if you're sitting there by yourself, or if you got a couple people, probably not in the room, I don't know if I'll ever get used to this. You got to describe the product that you're going to sell. So describe it. Is it a cube that you give to physician's assistants where they can stick an embryo in and assess its quality at a fertility clinic? Is it a bucket of ink, right? What is it? Is it a data set, right? What is that product that you're going to give somebody? Is it a clean data set where you collect and crunch the data and then, oh, look, I package it up into a PowerPoint that I give the teams and say, hey, you got to give me money for it? Describe your intended market, right? And so for us, it's the eco-friendly cardboard packaging groups, right? So who needs cardboard ink? Who's in that space where they say, hey, I'm the most eco-friendly? And so you can describe your intended market, right? And then the customer, right? So if we were going to say the e-commerce folks who make specialty products that they ship out of their home, but they need cardboard boxes to ship their products, and their focus is on eco-friendly e-commerce or high margin e-commerce, that's a pretty good way to define that. So the ask is for the next couple minutes for you to sit back and actually try this.
Could you go through that on yours, Steve? I know you kind of did through your presentation, but not to put you on the spot.
Sure, yeah, for Living Ink.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right now it's e-commerce company owners, small company owners who do business through e-commerce, that do their own shipping and are looking for eco-friendly alternatives. So are looking for market share because of their bend on clean, renewable, eco-friendly products. So why can't I think of the name? Bedrock Sandals. Bedrock Sandals is a great example. So it's a company in California that ships products directly from their facilities. They are very keen on paying their employees a living wage and describing them. They're about an outdoor lifestyle, and they're kind of expensive shoes. And they ship them e-commerce mostly. So they do some REI, but that's very few physical stores that they actually ship from. So that would be an example of the target customer, right? The market is flexographic ink that's placed on uncoated cardboard. So you can do coated cardboard with our inks, but we focused on uncoated cardboard. It's a flexographic water-based ink that's carbon negative.
So, okay, and just to go back to the one that's easier to pronounce, you chose e-commerce over REI as your target or initial market. Was there a reason? Because I know that you've placed product in REI.
Yeah. Less steps in the workflow to get to the person who's actually putting the cardboard together and shipping the product. I would say that that's why e-commerce is easier for us to get into, because usually the people who are reaching out that are doing e-commerce are in small shops, and there's less steps to making the decision to use an alternative ink with a eco-friendly bend on it.
I'm looking at the names of some of the people who are on here today, and one question they may have is volume. So for instance, I mean, you're a small guy. It sounds like you haven't, gotten some megalithic manufacturing partner to manufacture this in huge quantity. So going after customers also that order in smaller quantities?
Yeah. So smaller quantities, it's funny, these types of customers have more tolerance for our higher margin products. So that's one of the reasons why. So we can charge a premium and still have people expect to pay that premium. Most of the large groups say it's all about performance and cost. So one of the challenges associated with inks and pigments in particular is that it's a volume product. So it's usually considered a commoditized product, right? And so commoditized products are usually differentiated on price and not as much on specialty performance. So, but the e-commerce, the small groups are much more interested in getting more market share, right? And if they're interested in market share, there's a willingness to sort of look at the marketing component and the PR component of the ink. So, one of the other reasons why we picked that market was because we knew we could get our ink on cardboard in those markets so much faster. So we've had very in-depth relationship conversations with Nike. The funny thing is that we're talking to 4 different groups at Nike about using our ink. And some of it's flexographic ink, some of it's screen printing ink. And those relationships are going really well, but we've been working on those for 9 months to a year. And if that deal goes through, we may have a very functional company that's capable of living off revenue and not having to really do any equity raise. It'd be amazing. But with our SBIRs, we knew we had to get a product on our ink on a product. And that was really critical to show the NSF that it was time for us to commercialize and thus time for them to give us a phase 2. And that was easy with these groups. It wasn't I got to talk to 6 different managers of mine, and we're putting out product for our spring 2021 line right now. So you'll have a box in like a year and a half that you can show people. It was, hey, I need these boxes next week, and I'm willing to pay. And there's one person in between the end user and us in that market. And that was really easy to get product on. And you start telling people that you're a cutting edge science startup with real revenue from real sales, it changes the dynamic and changes the conversation with everybody past that.
Okay, so I want to stop. We told everybody it's workshopping time, and instead we just had one heck of a good conversation. I hope folks were listening about his transition from phase 1 to phase 2 SBIR. Tuck that away in the back of your head. Also tuck away in the back of your head the fact that Nike would be landing a whale, but I have very recent experience in my startup to say that landing a whale is not always as wonderful as we all think it'll be. And sometimes landing the correct sized fish who can actually work with you is really important. So lots of really great comments. You can also check the chat. I've had feedback privately from a couple of different people, but there's a lot going on of people thinking through You know, can you really be a product or a platform company, or do you need to just go on and choose one product? So Steve, I'm seeing several people on here who are really actively working on their ideas. And I'm wondering if Miles or Mark Leonard or Jonathan Vi, would any of you like to, or James Welts, would any of you like to jump in and just give this a try? You're not going to fail.
I'm happy to give it a shot.
Awesome.
So should I just work through this this slide right here? Select name, describe product,
Sure.
marketing, customer. Sure. Yeah, my name is Miles Binkson. I'm a PhD researcher at CU in aerospace engineering. And I do research on how satellites interact with the space environment, and they can become electrically charged. And when they do this, they can experience arcing, similar to like when you touch a light switch, maybe, and you feel a shock. And that can damage the spacecraft, and even in some cases prematurely end multi-million-dollar missions. So my product I'm working on is a testing device for satellite manufacturers and engineers to test their spacecraft in the same environment in which they fly. So it's a much more accurate testing environment, which will help mitigate the on-orbit risk. So that's my product.
Miles, well done. Yeah, I mean, you're drilling down into a product. I thought you did a really good job of actually talking about a target customer. So you're talking about the person that's actually going to hold the test and test the equipment. Many people always want to say, well, who my target customer is the aerospace industry. And it's like, well, that's not a customer. Well, they say Lockheed Martin, and the company's not a customer, right? And so you get down into imagining what product will be held by what person and what they're going to sort of envision, right? So how does that person buy products like this? Is there a wholesaler? Is there a third-party retailer? Things like that. So this is where, don't answer it yet, but this is where you can actually start getting some really cool knowledge on that space if you drill down into saying a product, a handheld tester that's held by a technician, right, that does this in this market. So fantastic. I thought you did a really good job.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm a project scientist at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and I'm working on weather and climate risk. And my specific product is something called the Hurricane Risk Calculator. And this is a tool that assesses each resident's real-time hurricane wind risks based on the characteristics of their home or residence and the predicted storm characteristics. And that will allow local governments to personalize evacuation recommendations, reduce unnecessary evacuations, and save lives. So my intended market is going to be city and county government emergency operations centers. And my target customers, I'm looking at Miami-Dade EOC and the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council right now, but possibly also Bermuda.
Great, Jonathan, well done. Yeah, so think about trying to drill down into that customer, right? So just like we talked with Miles, is if you were going to say who is going to actually be looking at your interface and saying, hey, I know what to do with this data, this gives me value, try to think about that one person. You know, this is part of the game of R2M, is finding that customer. So it is difficult. It is quite difficult. But as you start building these maps, you can say, okay, so who in this municipality is going to say, I want to do that? And as you go into customer discovery, you'll call those people and say, hey, am I talking to the right person?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, oh no, you got to talk to so-and-so, and then you may get to the right customer, right? So you may make that assumption correctly, you may make it incorrectly, but testing that assumption is really important. So great job overall.
Okay, thanks.
Couple of thoughts on that too. All these mentors are probably going to have comments. There is a woman working on large data sets of wildfire at CU, and she's worked with emergency response teams dealing with wildfire in real time. I'm going to connect you with her because I think that she will have some good experience on what it's like to find the people who are actually using the data. As I think through this, it sounds like you're trying to find, like in the city of Boulder, somebody who is going to be working on this problem. And I realize we do hurricanes right here, but city of Boulder, I suspect, is in a world of COVID hurt right now. So the question is anybody in local government at all focused on the fact that hurricane season is actually still coming? And, you know, we may get hurricanes on top of COVID in Florida. So who is the person who's actually still tasked on that job? That'll be an interesting challenge to dig down to, finding people who are, you know, still ready to talk about this.
Oh, we've actually been talking with them. The question is, will they have any budget this year?
That is a fantastic question. And I think that as you work through this, I mean, one of the questions that I have that I think you've been working on hard is, who will pay for this? So will the government pay for it? Will insurance companies pay for it? Will individuals pay for, you know, like a notification app on their phone that they need to be thinking about this? And you know, it could be that you end up having to pivot just because there's no money coming down the government for now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Actually, I'll give it a shot.
Okay, Mark, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Off because Steve has got, I've just realized what time it is. Steve, we've got 5 more minutes. So let's show what happens next in the workshop.
Yeah. So, you know, as we're going through this, and sorry, everybody, I got to run at 1 o'clock. I got another call. More than always more than willing to talk through some of this over the phone or on Zoom if anybody wants to go in more depth. But you got Sally and an army of support down at CU. So anyway, the next step is really to think about how does the work flow, right? And so this is where you get pen to paper. It can be very frustrating because you'll start putting things on a piece of paper and it won't look right. This is a great strategy to do this is you go grab those giant Post-it notes from Office Depot, put one on the board, on the wall, and take Post-it notes and write things. The best way to do this, though, is to differentiate between a thing and an action step. I think a lot of people get hung up on mixing those things up, right? Things and action steps. So you can see what I've done here, right? Work on the workflow. What is the process? What are the actual things that are going to be made, right? So if it's refined data, it's refined data, right? Where are you going to get that data from? Do you have access to that data to commercialize that technology? What programs are you going to run that on? Right? And so you have to start thinking about the tangible things that allow you to move unrefined thing to a refined thing and put it into the marketplace for somebody to use. And so with ink, it's pretty simple, right? We have pigment, we have vehicles, we mix those together, we refine those, we formulate those, we make them, we scale them, then we actually give them to printers and they print it. But what are they printing on? Things like that. So try to take a Post-it note color and use it only for the tangible things that you'll be making.
Can you, as you wrap, Steve, could you race back and just show us your slide one more time? I thought putting your ing
next step
on top of your actions, I had to see it to get my head around that.
Right there?
Yeah.
So that's the next step, right? So you put the things, now the action steps of things that need to be done, right? And so when I'm making a pigment, I don't just get a algae cell and put it into a formulation. That doesn't happen. So there's different steps. So what do? We mill, we process, we clean. So cleaning, milling, refining, testing, processing, scaling, delivering, distributing, right? Printing, troubleshooting, all of these things are actions that somebody's going to have to do. And so the ink steps are the real nice components on there too. And then the third part, well, this is step 2.5. Sorry, I need to rewrite this, is to call out those people that are going to be doing those things. And then the last part is putting together the map. So I know this is challenging. This is not going to be a linear process. You're going to get to the end and be like, uh-oh, I'm missing steps. One of the, I'll call this out really quickly because I thought it was really important. So for printing a product, when you're printing, say, boxes for Nike, you're running through a lot of ink. Conditions change. Ink changes because of conditions. It can be sitting on a shelf for 6 months. It can be put into a really humid environment. It can be put into a different printer, right? And so what happens is ink troubleshooting is a huge component of actually getting ink on a product. ink companies literally put employees in giant converter houses, and they just walk around the production floor and say, oh, that one's too tacky. Add X chemical in this volume to change the tackiness. And so we never knew that, right? And so as we got into this market, we started recognizing that, oh my God, if we scale, we got to have an ink chemist stand by the machine as it runs through 1 million Nike boxes. Petrifying as a company. And so this really pushed us to try to partner with some bigger groups, because Sun Chemical or DIC actually has people walking around the production floor at Quad Graphics, right? And so if they're partnering with us, they say, I got living ink. Don't worry, I know how to use it. I'll take care of it from here. Huge piece. Never knew that until we actually started building these maps. So that's sort of the last component of the entire process. I know I tore through this, and I know that we could spend hours on each step. And unfortunately, I've got to run. So
That's okay. We're going to wrap up here. We always wrap up on time. It's my new signature thing since joining CU. But folks, this is really helpful. So Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course.
All the way down from CSU to help us out. Everybody, try this. Try it at home. See if you can make it work. And you're going to kind of like mind boggle your head around it. Bring it to us, and let's talk through it. I think the idea of putting the subject matters there and then adding the ing verbs of how things move through this system is really helpful. And again, the things you get out of it are incredible. Everything from your own value proposition to your partnerships, really for the first time understanding competition. So on that note, thank you so much to everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. Steve, thanks again.
Yeah, of course.
We'll see all of you very soon. So take care. Have a good weekend.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye.
Thanks, Sally.